Hello and welcome to Mark Chatterton's Rock Files podcast. Today, I would like to welcome on the show Martin Turner, the founder, bassist and lead singer with Wishbone for many years. Martin still records and tours with his band under the name of Martin Turner X Wishbone and has kindly come over today to talk in person about his life, his music and Wishbone, of course. So a warm welcome to you, Martin.
How you doing, Mark? Good to see you again, mate.
Yeah.
Nice to be here.
Yeah.
It's a different little corner of England than where I am in Surrey.
Yeah.
And during the last 2 or 3 years, I've spent way too much time in Surrey.
So, bit of a change for you, hey?
Yep.
Yeah. So,
most welcome.
Let's just start off with Argus, because obviously the other day, it was the 50th anniversary of Argus being released, and it's been such a big influence on many people, and there's so many fans who cite it as their favorite album ever. What, looking back, would you say, why has it been such an important album?
It was 50 years ago. It just sounds like such a long time.
Yeah.
And it is, I guess. It's half of a whole century, isn't it? It's half of 100 years.
Yeah.
Mind-boggling, really. Well, to put it in context, Wishbone Ash, when it was formed at the end of 1969, we had previously in the 60s, we'd been the Empty Vessels for many years. Steve Upton, myself and my little brother Glenn as guitar player, and he used to help me singing and stuff. When we arrived in London, I mean, it really was so bloody hard going the first few months that we couldn't get any work, couldn't get off the ground. Glenn went and got a job, and it was all looking to go a bit pear-shaped. But Steve and I had met this guy, Miles Copeland, who became our manager. And we did audition initially for, another guitar player, none of whom we were happy with. So we ended up going with 2 guitar players, and that became, the Wishbone sound. I used to sing the melodies for them to play. They used to moan and bitch about how awkward it was. But when it's sung, it tends to be a lot more melodic, and we got off to a really good start. We were signed, to MCA in America by Derek Lawrence. He became our producer. So we had Derek producing. He'd had a hit with Deep Purple in the 60s, the song Hush, which was very poppy. Not that we had aspirations in that direction, because we didn't. We thought of ourselves as an album band, definitely. But he got Martin Birch in as the engineer. And the first 2 albums, Wishbone Ash, the introductory album for us, and Pilgrimage, the following one, were both recorded on 8 tracks at Delaney Studios. And then by the 3rd album, Argus, we're using the same team, the band, Martin Birch engineering and Derek Lawrence. It was very good at knowing how to steer the ship, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
When we were getting lazy and not getting on with it, he'd give us a good kick in and tell us to get on with it. And then if we were getting too serious and intense, he'd start cracking jokes and get everyone relaxed and laughing again. He was very good. So we had a great team. And on the Argus album, we went to the new Delaney, which eventually became CTS or something, up at Wembley Stadium, right under the Twin Towers, which was wonderful. And the luxury of recording with 16 tracks, amazing, so we went a bit over the top. We were like double tracking the guitars. We even double tracked the bass in a couple of places to get it to come through stronger. Now, we spent only about a week recording. Derek needed another week to mix the album. So basically, we had to record all the vocals, which we'd mapped out, you know, they did exist, where to perform all the vocals in one day, you know, which was really a bit in at the deep end. I wasn't keen because you know, singing is really physical. If you're gonna get the expression and really explore the tune, one day isn't enough. But we're like, well, if that is the limitation and that's what we're going to come up with, then, you know, crank the headphones up real loud and let's approach it like we're on stage. Just sing it down, bang, which is what we did. Andy was singing on quite a few of the tunes with me, so I wasn't totally alone. I mean, later on, when we listened to it back in the following weeks before it was released, a couple of people commented that the vocals sounded a little bit flat, which they were.
Yeah.
You know, that was because we had them so cranked up. You know, when you got really intense sound pressure level, you can start to pitch slightly under. You know, it was consistent actually when I finally checked it out. And we did wonder about, we should have spent more time on the vocals. Maybe, you know, is it not too late to go back in and do 2 or 3 days putting the vocals on again? But everyone was like, no, you can't do that. This is fine. I mean, I would have insisted on it if I'd known how this album was going to be once it got out. I mean, for me personally, I was literally overwhelmed with emotion when I finally heard the whole album edited together, played back in the control room. I mean, it was such a release for me, having worked on it, you know, composing, writing lyrics, composing the music and working on it for a whole year. It was about 9 months actually. So it was like having a baby.
Yeah.
And for me, when I listened to it back, I just started weeping. I mean, I could finally let go. And I thought it sounded absolutely wonderful. It sounded like everything I ever wanted the band to be. You know, I wasn't convinced that it was going to be successful because there didn't seem to be anything there that was a hit single, for instance, which is the one thing that record companies always want.
Yeah.
And I don't write stuff like that. I mean, I write what I write, and, you know, if it's good enough to go on this record, then maybe it's good enough to go on a different sized record. The only thing that we did have was Blowing Free, which was single Z.
Yeah.
And indeed, we had tried to record that before. And, you know, I've been emphasizing to my fellow minstrels, listen, this is an anthem that celebrates love, teenage love. So you've got to really inject some vitality into it and really get it sounding strong. And I think we tried to record it on the Pilgrimage album, somewhere around there, and it just sounded so limp. And I'm like, oh, I obviously didn't convey to these guys, you know, what I'm going after here. Yeah. So then when we were recording the Argus stuff, I suddenly said, right, guys, we're going to have a go at Blowing Free again. And they were like, really? You know, I'm like, yeah. And this time it's going to sound great. Okay. Now, when you listen to the bass on that tune, I mean, I was absolutely determined that you are going to work this time. You can hear that in the playing. The bass really pushes the song along like an engine. But the amazing thing was, I came back into the control room with Derek. I had a listen to it. And I, wow, I finally got it across to these guys. They're actually playing it now with some commitment, with some feel. You know, it sounds like it means it, you know, even though the vocal wasn't on there yet. I'm like, great, this is good. This is good. So then I think maybe the next day, I bumped into Derek because I was coming out of the control room as he was coming in. Oh, Mark, he says, can I have a word a minute? I'm like, yeah, what's up? He said, well, this song Blowing Free, So I, been having a chat with the guys, and basically all the other tunes, Warrior, Throw Down the Sword, Leaf and Stream, he said they're more serious, and Blowing Free is completely different. It's quite poppy and fluffy, and maybe it belongs on another album. I went psychotic. Like, are you fucking kidding me? Look, let me get one thing clear. It needs to be on the album precisely because all the other stuff is serious. And it provides a bit of balance, a bit of light relief. Okay, so it's going on the frigging album. End of conversation. And Derek was like,
speechless.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough. He didn't even want to argue the point. He could sense that I was so intense about it. That, to me, it was a typical cerebral Wishbone Ash at work, coming up with some half-baked fucking idea that was absolutely against all my instincts. And I put my foot down. It didn't always work, but on that occasion it did. But Argus without Blowing Free, nah, sorry, no.
Because at the time, quite a lot of artists who were described as, say, album bands, they did appear on Top of the Pops at a slot. Did you ever get offered to play Top of the Pops?
We did, yeah. And they asked us to do Top of the Pops, the BBC. I mean, at the time, I personally did not like Top of the Pops. It was getting to be really seedy somehow, like prurient, like where some businessman who's just arrived home from work, his missus is shoving his dinner in front of him and he's sitting down to watch Top of the Pops. All these girlies like wiggling their bums in front of the camera. That's what it smacked off, ABBA and everyone on there. It was just so contrived. Jimmy Savile. I mean, it was like there was something creepy about it somehow. And they rang us up and asked us, and we had a look. And well, we got a, next Tuesday or Wednesday or whatever it was, we've got a gig in Holland. So no, sorry, we can't do it. Most bands would have cancelled the gig and done Top of the Pops because following your appearance, records would be flying off the shelves. But we just weren't keen. Now, or I certainly wasn't. I Top of the Pops to me was crap. A lot of contrived shit that was just people making up songs because they want to be famous, and there was this slightly sick, prurient thing going on as well. Didn't want to be associated with that. Years later, in 1980, my fellow band members were voicing a lot of frustration about the lack of success. And I'm like what? You mean what, you want to be doing Top of the Pops? And they're like, yeah, that would be good. Oh God. They don't learn.
No. So going back to the early days, you first all moved down from Torquay over to London, and you were struggling.
I call it up from Torquay.
Okay, yeah. I'm trying to be geographically correct.
That dangly bit of the country that sticks out into the Atlantic.
Yeah.
I mean, I grew up there. I mean, it was great. In the summer, the population would double and triple in size. There'd be loads of people coming in, you'd meet people from all over the place. Essex, up north, Liverpool, and Swedish girls used to come over, Swedish students, and French guys who were so smooth. You used to study them. They had the right clothes with the perfume smell. They were so slick. And I grew up on a kind of roller coaster where the summers were just amazing. And, I'd spend a lot of time being a beach bum. you know, all bronzed and lovely and hanging out on the beach. I didn't wear shoes for like months, you know, and it was just great. And then the winter was, everyone's gone home. The population is a fraction of what it was, and it raineth. I mean, forever. You end up with trench foot walking around the streets. And I grew up thinking, there has to be somewhere drier than this. The West Country, sticking out into the Atlantic, the Gulf Stream comes over, goes up in the air as it hits the land, and deluges. The cows down there are eating all this ultra rich, greenest grass you've ever seen. The milk is very creamy, hence Devonshire's clotted cream, my dear. Devon and Cornwall is famous for it, and indeed the clotted cream does help to keep the moisture out because it's so waxy. But I just knew that there must be somewhere less wet, and indeed come across to London, different ball game. Still wet, but nowhere near on the scale it is in the West Country. So yeah.
How long were you sort of struggling for, you know?
How long?
Were you struggling until you sort of
I mean, looking back on it, I mean, you know, I had an accident on the first day of January in '69.
Yeah.
Which was a complete disaster at the time, but it was as a result of being up all night. And I could have killed someone in that accident because I passed out driving. That really focused the mind and made me commit, basically. Because we would have stayed in the West Country forever. But it forced me to think about my situation and, you know, do you seriously want to become a professional musician? I'm like, yes, I've got to give it a crack. Okay, then, you know, you need to be somewhere where you can accomplish that. And the only place was London. And London was a pretty rocking city then.
Yeah.
So it was I kind of became a pilgrim. I went to the Mecca of music. Which was London. There was still that kind of Carnaby Street swinging 60s vibe going. Well, it was '69 when we came up. It was still just about there, and we, I want to say we were lucky. I think we created our own luck. We were very positive, and all of a sudden we met Miles Copeland. We had played a gig at Dunstable Civic Hall supporting Deep Purple. And I saw Richie Blackmore watching us from the side of the stage for like a long time. You know, he was obviously intrigued. Didn't say a word to me, but he rang Derek Lawrence, or he was speaking to Derek Lawrence and mentioned there was this band that were really good, told him what they were called. So he tracked us down and rang up and said, you know, Richie told me you're a really good band. I want to come and have a look. You know, are you doing any gigs? And we're like, well, we haven't got any gigs at the moment. So he said, why don't you come down to a rehearsal? Which he did. He loved the band. And he said, look, a friend of mine has just been made head of A&R at MCA Universal in Los Angeles. I'm convinced that I can get you guys a deal.
Yeah.
If you pay the airfare for me to fly to LA and back, I'll come back with a deal. Well, what's that going to cost? Oh, it's 300 quid. I'm like, ouch, no way. In 1970, 369, 300 quid. No, in the end, we said, okay, you pay half and we'll pay half. So we came up with 150 quid. And Derek put the deal together, came back, and he was written in to produce the first 3 albums. And he did a great job.
Yeah.
Bless him.
And then obviously you went to America very quickly.
Well, when you're signed to an American record label, indeed, not in New York City on the East Coast, but in LA, right the other side of the world, and you're managed by an American, Miles Copeland, albeit living in London. But I mean, you know, the first thing he ever said to us was, you know, if I could get you guys out to the States, you know, wow, we can really do some stuff. So the record company wanted us out there, you know, they really did. We actually we had Hypnosis working on our artwork for us, and we put together the cover that became the Pilgrimage cover.
Yeah.
We sent that out to LA to be the cover for the first album.
Right.
And they said, what the hell is this shit? You know, what's this band called? Wishbone Ash. Okay, listen, we need to get a burnt wishbone, you know.
Yeah.
And we thought, Americans, you know, how simplistic they are, you know, mentally. And we thought it was a bit silly, that idea. But they put it together in their design department, sent it over to us, and we looked at this burnt wishbone that they described, and we were like, wow, it looked amazing. It looked really strong. And we had to concede they were right.
Yeah.
So that, you know, it was a good launch, the whole thing.
Because you ended up supporting the likes of Alice Cooper, Elton John in the early days, didn't you?
Yeah. We'd be in the dressing room chatting to Alice, you know, about international politics and, you know, having a really good conversation. And all of a sudden, somebody would come, Alice, you're on stage, man. You know, then he'd grab his bottle of whiskey and stagger on stage like a drunken bogeyman, you know, and the whole front row would go, ah! I mean, it was theatre. It was brilliant. And in those days, he was doing the thing where the band kind of capture him and put him up on the gallows, and all the lights go out in the building. There's just one spotlight on his face as he quivers, dying and having been hanged. I mean, absolutely amazing theatre.
Yeah.
He was a great guy. Really liked Alice Cooper.
I understand you support Elton John in his New York debut.
Yes, Elton was playing his first gig in New York City, which was really important, always. And he came down to our dressing room and he's like, guys, you know, listen, this is my first gig headlining in New York City, and I'm really nervous about it. Anyway, listen, to celebrate the occasion, here's a bottle of champagne for you. Very sweet of him to even bother with to be a support band. And I mean, we watched him that night. Him and the band were blisteringly good, you know, and they got off to a great start in NYC. Yeah, wonderful.
And you actually played at Madison Square Gardens, I believe.
Yeah,
supporting Robin Trower.
Was he?
I don't know.
Yeah, double headline with Robin Trower, who was a fascinating guitar player. I mean, he really did have that touch of being able to play like Hendrix, which I don't remember him being like that in the early days. Yeah. But it was something, I guess, that really went down well in the States. You know? And what was amazing to listen to him. He really reminded you of Hendrix. Fabulous guitar sound. But then at the end of songs, when he'd walk up to the microphone and with his high voice, thank you very much, we really appreciate it. It just didn't sound right. You know? She expected someone like Hendrix. Hey man, so, but very good, Robin Trower, excellent.
Because in the end, you were playing arena shows most of the time, weren't you?
Yes, so a lot of big gigs. I mean, from the day one in the States, I think the first gig we ever played was in Austin, Texas, supporting Back on Turner Overdrive, was it?
Yeah. Maybe.
You ain't seen nothing yet. All that jazz. And Chicago, we played with them. oh, what's the name of that great bluesy, stonesy American rock band? Can't think of their name.
Yeah.
The lead singer was going out with
Aerosmith.
no, before Aerosmith.
Before
Aerosmith. Yeah. What were they called? Lead singer was going out with the girl from Bonnie and Clyde, actress, brilliant.
Faye Dunaway.
Faye Dunaway. Yeah. Nice. I mean, Faye Dunaway stood on the side of the stage watching you perform. Yeah. There were some great times. I mean, we'd done gigs with the James Gang, down at Warehouse in New Orleans. And then Joe, we got a call from our agent. When would that have been? 73, somewhere around there, maybe. Our agent, Irving Azoff, was like, guys, you got to do me a favor. You got to do me a favor. I got to get Joe out on the road, all right. Irving, hang on. Listen, we got Vinegar Joe and Renaissance on the road. That's like 3 artists. That's more than enough. We're having trouble squeezing everyone in as it is. No, guys, you don't understand me. You've got to do me a favor. Like, really? Okay. Send him out then. So up rolls Joe, the next gig, with Barnstorm. Fantastic band. Kenny Pazzarelli and Joe Vitale was brilliant musicians. And sure enough, he's got a record out that's looking good, So he opens the show. Then he got bunged up after Renaissance. Then he got bunged up after Vinegar Joe, which was Elkie Brooks and Robert Palmer. We came out of the limousine outside the gig with Rocky Mountain Way playing on the radio, just gone to #1. Walked into the gig and he's playing it live on stage. If the tour had gone any longer, we would have been supporting him. Yeah. He came out on our tour. It was magic. The vibe in the stadium was phenomenal. It was wonderful. Great band, great song. Ba-bum. What's more to want?
So would you say Wishbone Ash didn't quite break America because you were doing?
We never really had any hit singles.
So it's the singles
except in the New Orleans area. The Wishbone 4 album, No Easy Road, got heavily played around New Orleans and the South, across to Texas, but particularly in New Orleans. And they absolutely loved that song. I mean, it's about rock and roll music, and that's very important down there. But I mean, we would have ZZ Top on shows with us, a support band, when they first started out. I mean, I can remember going out and buying their first album. Because I thought they were such a good band. Couldn't believe it the first time I saw them. And I walked on the side of the stage to check them out, and I'm like, 3 guys? That can't be right. Where's the rest of the sound coming from? I mean, they were just so ballsy. And they were just a great band, from day one. You could sense that. And we when we were down south, there'd be Black Oak, Arkansas, there'd be Lynyrd Skynyrd, there'd be all these southern bands, but ZZ Top, it was years before they actually took off. They were playing for quite a while. And in those days, Billy Gibbons used to sing up a lot more and also play some beautiful blues guitar. It was great to have seen them in those days. So No Easy Road, New Orleans. All the radio stations were playing it. It was number 1 hit single, but only down south. So that makes a difference. That does catapult you, and all of a sudden TV shows want you to appear, and ba-bum.
So getting back to Britain and Europe, you played all these festivals in 1975 and the Startrucking thing, and
well,
you headlined Reading
around the middle of the 70s. We had been working so hard. Miles, bless him, had us, our lives were mapped out for the next year, 18 months. And it was just, after 3 or 4 years of it, you were starting to feel like some rodent on a treadmill, because it was relentless. And we all just needed a bloody holiday, basically. Ted was the first one to break, and he was like, I'm out of here. I've had enough. And Ted was a guy that used to play so intensely, he used to put a lot into it, and he used to sweat a lot, so he would become exhausted. We'd have to take him to hospital, and they'd be like, this guy seems to be severely dehydrated, and does he drink fluids? He's quite fond of whiskey. But it was tricky. Ted, I mean, Ted would tell you something different. I think he just got sick of playing all the music over and over and over and over, the first 3 albums. And he wanted to try new things. There was a lot of new music, Stevie Wonder and funky stuff. He wanted to do some different things. So that was a tricky period, mid-70s.
So what about Laurie joining? Did that change the dynamic of the band altogether?
Yes, it did. But in quite a positive way, really. It sort of, Laurie's level of musicianship was pretty impressive, and I think it made us all up our game a little bit. It certainly had that effect on me. I was willing to try a bit harder, maybe, I don't know. Initially it was a bit of a weird one for Andy Powell, because he'd always been the flash guy, and Ted was the sort of quieter, bluesy type player. Now, all of a sudden, he was a bit lost, because Laurie was the flash guy as well, And I used to have a word with him now and again. I'm like, Andy, don't be intimidated by that flash little bastard. Just do what you do, mate. And kind of try it, because I think he was a little bit intimidated by Laurie's ability. I know he was, because he used to go home and practice a lot, so he could get up to the same level of proficiency, and he did. After a year. But it was a good period. I mean, it was a kick up the backside for us all, I think. And we made some good music with Laurie. And in fact, Laurie did a very good job of playing all Ted's licks from the first 3 albums. Probably played them a lot longer than Ted did.
And then you lived in America for a bit, and then you came back sort of 76.
I wasn't.
Why was that?
I wasn't in favour of that. I felt that we were spending a lot of time in America. We were doing 6-week tours, sometimes 1 a year, 2 a year. I think we did 3 1 year. I mean, it was like intense. I can't think of any other band that started from ground zero, ground level, and we're dashing backwards and forwards playing America and then in the UK and Europe. It was really intense. Normally you make it in one territory and then you go across at a higher level. We were doing it from the bottom rung up, and it was really, really hard work. But we were young guys. We weren't all kind of married and settled down with kids yet, so we were able to do that for a few years. But it did put a hell of a strain on everyone, I think, and I think that had to do with why Ted left the band, personally. But when we hit the mid-70s, yes, you mentioned the Startrucking Tour, which was quite ambitious. I mean, nobody in those days had actually done a kind of European tour with a package. There was originally, it was John McLaughlin, was it?
Yeah, Tina Turner.
Tina, yeah.
I think Renaissance again.
And
Lou Reed was meant to be headlining, and he pulled out.
Yeah, he pulled out.
Mm. Climax Blues Band.
Sorry?
Climax Blues Band, I think.
Was it Climax?
Yeah.
Great band.
Mm.
Peter Haycock, wonderful guitar player. Yeah, I mean, it was a big undertaking there. Miles decided to keep everything on one aeroplane.
Yeah, I've seen that.
He went to see a plane up this neck of the woods somewhere.
Yeah, you flew off from Southend, didn't you?
And it was a big turboprop.
Mm.
And he decided, okay, we'll rent that, and we've got to get all the equipment and everyone on it. So they asked for everyone to give them details of how much equipment and what it weighed.
Mm.
So we all submitted it. Not that we were very clever at putting that together in those days, but when we actually rolled up on the day, the pilot was freaking out. It was like, listen, this is not what you guys told me you were going to be putting on this plane. And, you know, we're going to be really heavily laden here and blah, blah, blah. So, you know, we're going down the runway forever. And he's take off eventually. So he did gradually get up, but the plane was like way too much equipment on it. So when we got out to Germany, a couple of the bands, I think Renaissance, decided they would travel, they'd rent something and travel by road. And I remember we were trying to organize something for us. And there was a particular day we had Chris Welch, I think, with us from Melody Maker, observing this kind of cacophony of trying to plan ad hoc on the run, you know, and as the day went on, we're all up first thing in the morning trying to figure out how we were going to proceed from here on. I think we had to get down to Marseille in South France for a gig. In the morning, we were trying to get flights. No, we were trying to arrange to travel by road, but it was taking so long that after lunch in early afternoon, the only option that we had was to hire a plane in order to get down there in time for the show. So we had a bloody jet flew down from Amsterdam to pick us up, take us down to the south of France, and then fly back to Amsterdam. I mean, you know, with like 3 stewardesses and, you know, a flight crew. I mean, you know, when we got on the plane, I said to Steve, tell me we're not paying for this. I mean, I knew it was going to cost a fortune, but it was the only way to get there. Tina Turner, somebody made a call to French customs and told them that Tina had drugs in their equipment. We think that was the French promoter because he told Miles backstage. I mean, it got quite ugly. It got really, it was right on that flashpoint, you know. I think a knife was drawn even about, you didn't supply me with the whole show. We had one band didn't appear, so I'm only going to pay you half the money. And there was like a real ding dong about that. Funnily enough, that was in Orange, in a Roman amphitheater. Probably one of the best gigs we ever played. I mean, it was legendary, that gig. I mean, everyone spoke about it for years afterwards. It was magical. I think Bad Company were on the day before. We headlined the last day, and I'd had food poisoning or something. I mean, I'd been sick, and then I fell asleep backstage on some amplifier covers. And then Kevin woke me up about 2:30 in the morning. Mark, you're on stage. And I'm like, oh no, please. You know, my mouth tasted like a gorilla's armpit. But I went on stage, we performed, and the audience were quite mellow. I mean, I suppose they'd been sitting there for 3 days.
Yeah.
So we played, and it sounded amazing. You know, I'm thinking, how the hell did the Romans know how to design a gig in those days?
Yeah.
But it sounded amazing. It really did, in this stone amphitheater with the sky for a ceiling. And then the sun popped over the ridge of the stadium and shone on the stage, like in the last tune, like Phoenix or whatever it was.
Yeah.
And the atmosphere was like unreal. It really was bizarre. And we finished. That was it. It was the end of a 3-day festival. And the audience stood up and applauded for like, it seemed like 15 minutes, you know, just went on and on. And then I remember I was walking back to the coach, and this beautiful girl appeared by my side. She's a well-known French model. I think she was mixed race, you know, like part Moroccan or Algerian. She's absolutely lovely. And I got chatting to her. I said, why don't you come back to the hotel for breakfast? So we had breakfast together.
Yeah.
And I've never seen her again since. But she's a lovely, lovely girl.
Yeah.
So it was like, if you said, what was the best gig you ever played? That was up there.
Yeah, sure.
That was pretty damn good. Yeah.
What about your expectations?
Oh, I didn't tell you the one absolute bummer about that tour. We finished in Spain, and I remember, Steve, we were in a hotel room, and we were getting paid in cash, all the money from right the way through from Scandinavia, Germany, France, Spain, and we were told, if you try and take all that cash across the border, you know, you could get it confiscated. So but at least we got it. At least we got the money. But they were insistent that you really should put it through the bank. So it went through the bank, got sent back to London via the bank of Miles's company in Amsterdam, where the guy in Amsterdam had, in order to get the tour on the road, had got a loan from the bank using his house as collateral. So they had a lien on his house. So when the money hit Amsterdam, he grabbed it, cleared the debt with the bank, so his house didn't get grabbed, and we never saw a penny. I mean, we were due for payment of something like £50,000, I believe. Now, you imagine a loss of £50,000 in 1975. I mean, what would that be now? I mean, you could probably put a naught on the end of that, I would think,
at least.
And it nearly put us out of business. I mean, the thing of going to live in America was kind of maybe running away from the problems that created. And it gave us a bit of breathing space, and we could separate ourselves from Miles to try and recover and get going again. Because it was pretty debilitating, that whole period. And in fact, a lot of people did sue him. We didn't want to do that. You know, we worked together for a long time, and we just wanted to get the hell out of it, really, which is partly why we ended up going to the States. Against my will. I wasn't for it, but the other three were. So I was prepared to give it a try. You know, we were talking about for a year, maybe 2. It ended up being 3. And after living in Connecticut for 3 years, you know, you start thinking, well, there are a couple of things that happened to me. I mean, I thought to myself, you know, I mean, it was having a pretty corrosive effect on my marriage because my wife was not happy being out there. And the only way I could get her to come out was with the proviso that, listen, if you get sick of it and you want to go back to England, there's a ticket waiting for you. And she did. She used to go back regularly, and I'd be out there on my own. We didn't see each other much for a period of 3 or 4 years. And after living there for 3 years, I kind of remember thinking one day, how many actual friends have I made in America? Because everyone's so, hey, Marty, come over to my place.
Yeah.
But it's somewhat superficial. You know, you didn't, there was no one that I could call a friend after 3 years, except my landlord, Mr. Schoenberg, Lee Schoenberg, great guy, New York, you know, what do you call it? Advertising executive, you know, and we got on really well. The guy who serviced our cars, Donnie, an Italian-American dude, I went and picked my car up one day and he said, Martin, hey, listen, man, I want to show you, this car's making some noises, you know, let me just take you around the block. So he drove around the block and he pointed out a couple of things it was doing and told me what it was, and it was going to need attention and stuff. Okay, you know, brace myself for the next bill. And as we're driving back up the street, there's a black kid walking down the sidewalk, and Donnie makes the shape of a gun, like this, as we went past. So I said to him, you got something against that kid? Did he do something to you or something? And he looked at me and he's like, yeah. Martin, listen, you're a fucking English dude, right? I don't expect you to understand. But listen, man, I got to tell you, there is going to be a war in this country between the white guys and the black guys. And when it happens, man, I'm fucking ready. I'm all tooled up. I got my weapons. I'm like, whoa, stop right there. This guy went psycho about how the next civil war was about to go off any minute. And he done weapons training. He was part of a militia. I mean, I dropped him off and I drove home thinking, I need to get out of this country. These people are fucking nut jobs. They all got pistols and weapons. It's like, it's another culture because we speak the same language. You know, you think the culture is the same, but it's not. I mean, having said that, I go to America every year and I've got family there and people, you know, friends. It's a great country, but this little experience up in Connecticut kind of put me off a little bit. And it's like, you know what? I'm going to go back to Europe. I mean, I grew up listening to Russian music, you know, and I was thinking, okay, I've lived in America for 3 years. Let me go live in Russia for 3 years and see if I've got more in common with a Russian than I do American. I mean, I didn't go to Russia, but I came back. I thought that I was going to be leaving the band because I thought these three guys will definitely want to stay here. To my astonishment, they all came back to England. I mean, Andy was a bit reluctant, and you know, he kept his foot in the door in Connecticut, and went back there a few years later, and has lived there since the 1980s. Yeah, messy.
Yeah, because I was going to say about when you sorted out, what were your expectations? Were you thinking, I'll do this for 10 years and then settle down? But here you are now in your 70s still playing. So yeah, how does that work really?
Well, to be honest with you, I would have to admit that I've kind of tried on various occasions to not be a musician. You know, do something else. Oh, okay. I got heavily into studio and recording.
Yeah, yeah.
And I did spend many years, especially in the 80s, recording with musicians of all different styles and colors, and lots of different stuff. That there was me and a guy from Roxy Music, Phil Manzanera.
Yeah.
In the 80s, we were the two guys that had professional setups at our homes.
Yeah.
So, we could work for cheaper than you would have to pay in a professional studio. So, we did a lot of work, and I learned a lot from doing that. But even that accident that I had that forced me to make a decision about becoming a professional musician. And then at various other points where I've kind of tried to slither out the back door and find something else to do, but somehow fate always contrives to bring me back to the chosen path.
Yeah, yeah.
And I am a creative person. There's no getting away from it. I've got a kind of creative, magical streak that I don't profess to be completely in control of at all. Sometimes it works great, other times it doesn't. It's a bit like being a mad magician.
Yeah.
But it's in my blood. I mean, it has been from day one. I was bombarded with music as a kid. My dad played music all the time. He was one of those guys that played, if he liked a song, he would play it over and over and over and over again. And he would like, look, can we stop playing that tune now? I mean, because it would drive him nuts. But as well as that, my mother enrolled me in the church choir as a young boy. She'd been a singer. Her mother was a piano player. Both of my grandparents were piano players. There was a tradition of music in the family, and I was just drenched in it, from a young boy. Singing in the church choir was something that really benefited me. I think it gave me I became a very good singer, and I became very confident about singing, which for a young kid is pretty good going, really. Okay, I haven't got the best voice in the world. I'm not, Sting or Rod Stewart, but I know how to sing, and I really enjoy it. I think everyone should do it. Join a choir. Yeah, it's good. Breathing all that oxygen in.
So you're quite happy to be out on the road in your 70s and still playing, because you've still got an audience there.
I mean, to be honest, I wouldn't have thought that would be the case. How am I going to be working with guys that are younger generation than me? They've some of these guys that I'm working with, they were just babies when I was out gigging. So that's worked fine. I enjoy playing small gigs like we do nowadays to the residual people of our age group that want to come out and listen to rock and roll music. I enjoy playing those gigs probably more than I did playing stadiums in the States, because you were backstage. You never made contact with the audience until you walked on, did your thing and then walked off again. Sometimes, you would, the car would be in the building, you'd come out of the dressing room, get in the car, and you just didn't make contact with anyone. All you saw was the gig, the hotel, and the plane. But nowadays, playing small places to 100, 200, 300 people, you meet people that have been listening to the music for decades, and they've got something to say. and it's interesting. I mean, there was a guy up in the northeast who was a bit. He came up to me a few times. He was a bit needy. He was obviously down on his luck. He eventually told me that he'd broken up with his wife and she wouldn't let him see his son, who he was really crazy mad about. And he was tortured. I got the impression he might be taking drugs or definitely alcohol. He had no money. And I used to get him into gigs, you know, free of charge, because he really wanted to come and see us play. And when we were in that neck of woods, you know, I'd see him and I'm like, oh, here he is, you know, he'd be needy and I'd help him out. Well, I didn't see him for a few years. He was around for quite a while, and then I didn't see him for a few years. And then I walked in, we were doing a small gig at a working men's club up there in the northeast, and we were bringing the equipment in, and I just happened to look, and I thought, wow, that's that guy. Can't remember his name, but he looked clean, wholesome, well-fed. He didn't look tortured anymore. And he didn't leap up and come rushing over to me. He just winked and smiled. That meant a lot to me.
Yeah.
I'd hung in there with him and he got there.
Yeah.
He fixed himself and he'd survived. That's my job. That's what music does for people. It helps to lift their spirits. To some people, music is about as valid as a freaking wallpaper. You know, it's just a backdrop to your life. But with other people, you know, they have personal experiences, you know, maybe a member of their family died or something. And the music is something that they shared with that person. So it takes on a significance. And I have to be conscious of that. I have to be sensitive to that. So, you know, when people come up and they want to chat about the music and stuff, it's important stuff.
Yeah. Because I think it's quite crazy to think that a lot of your fans now are grandparents themselves. Back in the 70s, they were 15, 16-year-old teenagers, and they stayed with you all that time.
I mean, I'm not very good with all that. You know, I don't know how old my children are. You know, my kids, I've got a granddaughter who's having a birthday this weekend coming. I haven't got a clue how old she is, but you know, some of them I get on great with, you know, others, you know, we get on, but you know, not, I don't know, it's rapport. And there's no guarantee, is there really? But they're all wonderful, all the members of the family. You know, it's fascinating because you've got like variations on the same theme. It's intriguing. But I swear half of them haven't got a bloody clue what my life consists of.
Finally, I just want to ask you, because you did the Written in the Stars album, and that was very successful. You got an award for it, didn't you? And are you going to do a follow-up to that? Is there anything in the pipeline?
Yes, I mean, the problem is, you know, back in the 70s when I was signed with MCA Universal, you put a record out and it would sell 20, 30, 50,000, maybe 100,000. You know, some of the albums went, well, quite a few of them went silver, gold, platinum. If I do an album now, it sells a couple of thousand copies. You know, the income from it doesn't even pay for the recording.
Sure.
Unfortunately, that is a fact of life. I mean, okay, you know, I've got some fabulous recording equipment, so you know, we can afford to make an album. But the last time I did that with Written in the Stars, I mean, to pay for the equipment that broke during the recording sessions and I had to get fixed cost me, I can't remember whether it's £1,000 or 2,000 quid. But I mean, I just about managed to cover that.
Yeah.
You know, if I had insisted on taking money out for, what was it, 6 months of recording, something like that. I mean, maybe it was over 6 months, maybe it wasn't that in total, but I mean, nobody would have received a penny for making that album.
Yeah.
So, I mean, when the first royalties started coming in, it was fairly clear to me that if any of the members of my band were going to receive anything, you know, if they didn't, they would be pretty disappointed. So we had to make sure that everyone got paid, which meant, you know, I lost what would be quite a lot of money because we weren't able to pay for the studio time.
Yeah, yeah.
Now, going back to the 70s, I mean, when you are signed to a big record label, you know, they used to advance us money, serious money. I think it was $8,000 or something in the early 70s. By the end of the 70s, they were advancing us something like $150,000 for an album.
Yeah,
which is a lot of money. That can keep a band afloat for a year.
Yeah, sure.
You know? Unless you end up spending a lot of time in studios, can get expensive. But nowadays, you've got like streaming companies that are mainly in America. They build themselves up into this huge megalith with, you know, everything available for everyone that they charge for. And they make up their own rules about how much they're going to pay you, which is usually 0.0002 of a cent.
Yeah.
You know, which goes to your record company. They take a share of it, and then you get like, I don't know, some minute amount of money, unless you're getting like tens of millions of hits. You know, and unfortunately, that economic structure, which has kind of replaced the record company with money that can be used to develop bands, streaming service, and the only people that are getting rich are the people that own the streaming service. The money is not ending up with musicians, creative people. So if you follow that to its conclusion, that is going to snuff out creative music. I mean, I hope not, but that seems to be the way it's going at the moment.
Yeah.
The economics of you know, being creatively involved in music and making, they just don't add up anymore. Really. Since the demise of big record companies, which did work. You know, they made a lot of money, and they were in a position to help bands get established and promote them. Not going well, though. That system.
So really, going out on the road is the only way you make any money.
Yeah, kind of. Yeah. You know, selling merchandise and playing gigs, but it's hard work, and that as well. You know, once you get costs rising like they've done recently with both inflation and the cost of fuel, you know, that can very easily put a serious ding in the equation. Yeah. So that, you know, instead of making a small profit, you're making a small loss.
Yeah, sure.
We shall see. I mean, there's always a way, but very difficult.
So you're quite happy to keep going out on the road for the
time being? At the moment, yeah. You know, it's not, nobody's getting rich, but you know, it's a nice thing to do, and at the moment I can still do it.
Yeah,
you know,
sure.
You know, I'm driving a van with the gear in it. singing and playing bass. And despite my age, I seem to be able to do that at the moment.
Yeah.
How long it will last, I don't know.
No. Okay.
Yeah.
Well, thanks very much, Martin, for taking the time out to come and speak to us. And
good to see you, Mark.
And so much more we can talk about, but I think you've talked quite a lot, and
we've
you
covered
probably
a
need
fair
a
bit.
break now. But thanks for the interview, and I'm sure people enjoy what they've heard anyway.
Yeah, hopefully.
And
hopefully.
And we enjoy you playing live anyway.
Yeah. It's good, isn't it? Live music.
Yeah. All right then. Thanks. Right.